Welcome back to Beyond Two Souls. We're now in part 6 and going on to the Condenser chapter. Finally, after the absolute bore fest that was the last chapter. Because this one I do really quite like a lot. There's some interesting stuff that goes on. There's a really interesting atmosphere to it. And we get a bit of a feel for how the entities work too. Gives us a little bit more depth to what's been going on this whole time.
They've created a condenser, a machine to open a rift to what lies beyond.
They've opened a passage? To Aiden's world?
Something happened last night. Entities got through the rift and we couldn't shut down the condenser. Everybody in the building was slaughtered. None of the rescue teams came back. They called and asked for your help. I told them you were just a child, that it was too dangerous. They know only you know how to deal with what lies beyond the rift.
Yeah, this is suddenly throwing us into really dangerous sounding territory. Not sure how to feel.
Go ahead. Jody, if you don't want to do it, just say, and I'll take you back.
You've really put us in a position where we can't say no. Let's be honest here, Nathan.
I'll do it.
Because it's either, yeah, I'll do it, or no, it's alright, I'll just let the whole world be fucked because you've let these things loose. That's kind of what's going on there. That music though. And then suddenly it stops.
What are you thinking? You don't understand. She's the only one that can stop this.
We got any information coming out of there?
Is that the girl?
Anything?
I'm sorry, miss. You can't come in.
She can go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do this. I'm ready to go.
At this moment in time, Jodie is about 17 years old. So she's at a point where she's conscious of what's going on, but still young, if that makes sense.
What they look like? They're not telling us everything.
Nobody else. There's no way to continue.
The condenser is in the lower basement. You need to find the control room. That's all they could tell me. Jody, the entities around the rift, they're not like Aiden. They're from the depths of the other side. We know almost nothing about them.
This really isn't sounding too promising in terms of getting back out alive. Though, on the subject of getting back out alive, you do have the possibility to come back out. Like, I'm not sure why you would, but I believe you can. But I'm not going to, because, as I say, I don't see the point of coming back out for any reason. But if you do what I'm going to do and go through the whole chapter without returning outside, you get a trophy called Portal Shutdown. That it's just going in there and doing the entire thing in one run.
I don't know about you, Aiden, but I'm scared.
But when I was talking about atmosphere earlier, you can see already the fact we've got the building that really doesn't look in too great of a state. We've got blood everywhere that kind of tips you off about the kind of scenario we're walking into.
Great. Oh, the elevator's stuck. Go see what you can do, Aiden.
Now, as someone who is never really comfortable in lifts, this particular part of the chapter really kind of leaves me on edge a little bit, because we know things have been knocked around and we know that there's structural damage at least to the building, and we're going to get in the lift, and that kind of makes me feel so uncomfortable just thinking about the thought of getting into this lift now. And I'm well aware that that is a over the top paranoia sort of thing to an extent, but like, nah, this is kind of making me cringe a bit. Like, the lift won't even come up to the surface properly. So, like, you can probably get how I'm feeling about this. This is the first of many dead bodies we're going to be seeing. Just as a heads up. This mechanic here, it's a little bit fiddly to use. What you need to do is use the 2 analog sticks to direct the blue flow into Jodie. And what it does is it lets her have a vision of that person's memories. And there are actually 8 different times during the chapter when you have the opportunity to check their memories. If you get all 8 of them, you get a trophy. And that trophy is called Channeling Master, which sounds cool. It's a cool name. But importantly, at this moment in time, we survived the lift. And that is such a relief on me. I think that was supposed to be a jump scare, but the music had too much of a build up for it to really have the same shock to it. It's the thing with jump scares, they need to be sudden to work. With that one, you had the sort of whoosh sort of sound effect leading into the sudden smack. So I kind of knew something was gonna happen. Suddenly zombies. Or not. If there's one thing I do like in games, it's this kind of eerie feeling that even though there's not explicitly anything up, there's this kind of feeling that everything here isn't quite right. There's this little quirk going on that you know something's up but you can't tell what, and that's the general tone we'll get for at least the first half of this until we really see what's going on. And admittedly that did get me a little bit.
Try to open it from the other side.
This is one section that I think does actually benefit from how ambiguous the introduction of the story's been. Because at this point in time, we're seeing these people just appearing there, and we don't know if they're real, like if there's things really jumping out, or whether they're Jodie having visions,
They're here.
or whether it's like the entity's doing something. We don't really know what's going on, and that just works so well for this sort of... It's not really a horror atmosphere, but it's this kind of creepy place. But yeah, trying to line these things up can be a pain in the ass sometimes, and I will struggle with them in quite a few places. Now, something else that leaves me a little bit on edge, the amount of electronics there with just things flashing and cables coming out all over the place. And although I'm normally okay with that, I'm not normally bothered by that sort of thing, the fact that there's certain things on fire, and I can see that being an opportunity for something to spark and then go up, it just makes the situation that much worse. and being trapped in a small confined space is something that doesn't sit too well with me either. I sound like a right pussy throughout this part, I am well aware of that, but there's just so many of these little things that kind of leave me on edge. And to an extent, I don't know whether that's an anxiety thing, whether that's just a general phobia thing. It's just, I think it's because I have all these little quirks that I appreciate this chapter so much more than possibly a typical person might. Not 100% sure about that. Because I do like it when parts of games or stories can have this kind of emotional, personal response within me. Because it just has that extra dimension of like connection with my enjoyment of the story. If there's one thing that lets this area down a little bit, and I know this is a proper Flameclaw tier nitpick, the fire isn't really as detailed as the other pieces in the room. Because there's a lot of graphical detail in like the different electronic things, and even like the whiteboard, the wall texture there, you can see all the different scratches and shit. But the fire is just like an orange brush effect. Essentially, it's just not really anything too special. And that radio thing, that works a little bit better than that first jump scare we had, purely because I think having a sudden change in sound does a lot more than having something suddenly jump out at you. Because like, I think when you're just observing something, you tend to prioritise the sight. You pay more attention to what you can see ahead of you, and you probably in your mind automatically put all your focus into that, so you're prepared for things to jump out at you. But as soon as something attacks one of your other senses, like say your hearing, that's what brings you to just really spark up and jump. Yeah, the whole place is burning to the ground, and we're gonna stop to see what's up with these people laying here. Priorities, Jodie, priorities. And what you're not seeing there, that's kind of an extra level that makes me not like those, like, reading the memories mechanic, is that when you're doing that, the controller vibrates like a bitch. And so while you're trying to get the blue flow line to line up, you've got this thing shaking manically in your hands. And normally I don't mind vibrate functions that much, like I don't think they're necessary, and I think you can turn it off, but don't quote me on that. I like them to a degree, but when it's overused it just becomes a distraction.
Fire extinguisher. There's got to be one around here somewhere. Find it, Aiden.
Yeah, we're meant to be looking for a fire extinguisher, but let's throw around some tables. That's more important.
No point in doing that, Aiden.
But first, let's get a packet of crisps and a drink. No, don't turn it off, I want a drink. Now it's time for some sick throwing skills. Now the thing itself, like, yeah, it's a fire extinguisher, but it's metal on the outside, so surely that would be like really hot to the touch right now. That actually seems like a flaw in fire extinguisher design, actually. Unless they do have some sort of cooling thing going on that I don't know about. So that happened. I really do like the feeling of having to be careful that this is giving off, because, you know, it's really appropriate to the atmosphere.
No, please, go away. God, no, please.
Easy. I'm Jody. I work with Professor Dawkins.
The entities, they invaded the laboratory. Creatures from the depths.
So they're playing up all the possible different things that could go wrong.
Elevator.
Because we've had the guys who are possessed, now we've got the guy who's clearly insane.
Those things will kill you.
I'm not alone.
We always face death alone.
That's deep. Gotta love these action prompts. I'm so glad that some of this fight at least are just typical QTEs, because the action prompts get old really quickly. And smack. And smack. This section here, I believe it's this particular fight, is something that got changed in the European version. Because that part where you saw the bar, that in the North American version, it actually, you saw it go in right into his neck. Whereas in this one, it just sort of disappeared into nothing. But this is a really cool fight. It does wonders for the feel they're going for. Given Jodie's age at this point, this must be really mentally taxing for her. Because she's just gone into a place that's in the process of being destroyed and she can't do anything. Now she's seeing a load of dead bodies around. She's just had to fight someone who's been possessed. That must become a complete mental wreck after that's happened. And seeing all these visions of people shooting themselves really can't be helping the situation either. I mean, it does actually show a lot of bravery in her character, that she's just carrying on going with this despite all of the stuff that's obviously playing on her mind. Joji, I would move. Just saying. Oh, it's alright, it opened inwards, no problem.
Stay close, okay?
So this same building has fire, electricals, and now a sprinkler system. Health and safety, guys. Health and safety. Credit where credit's due. The action prompts in this chapter are mostly clearer than the ones in Hunted. There's still quite a few that are offenders in that respect. Like, you just saw the ones that got me then, but they're mostly better. It's always great when you got the power of QTEs to slip your way into spaces that would otherwise be difficult to get to. Don't worry guys, they're not dead, they'll just wake up in 1,000 years. It's alright, nothing to worry about.
I can feel the echo on the other side. Let's take it really slow. Maybe we can slip through unnoticed.
So now, as well as mentally scarred, terrified, we're now also freezing. Lovely. It's just one of them days, isn't it? I suppose we all have them. I think that if you were to trip on one of them bodies there, I think they'd come back up and start attacking. It's been a little while since we first played through the game though. Okay, well apparently it's not letting me trip on that guy, so maybe not. It's one of them parts where the sound direction, just with having Jodie breathing as like off as she is, it's something else that really puts you into the scenario. You know that she's cold and disturbed. Now what I think was a missed opportunity there that I wish I'd done is if they just had the first one that jumped up be the guy behind her. Like if she just stood up and had that moment to kill and then had him sort of crawl up behind her or even just jump up behind her. But I think it kind of killed the tone a little bit having it as someone in front of her that stood up first. And the glass looks really nice there, just gonna say. Look, I know you guys are possessed in that, but surely if it's not working for the first few guys, the rest of you would get the hint to not bother. Did they just shut the door when they were trying to get through? Slight flaw we've got the ID card, but there's also a number pad, and I would imagine that somewhere as high security kind of thing, where there's so much dangerous stuff around, would expect you to have an ID card and put a pin in. Like, just having swiped the card really doesn't seem like the kind of security this place would have.
The energy level in the condenser's still rising.
Now what we're seeing through there is the condenser, and the entire room with the condenser in it is just so fucking cool to look at. Like, you can even see just through the window right now, you got the glowing and all the different entities flying around. It's absolute chaos, but it's well directed chaos. It's just really, it kind of gives me chills a bit just at how awesome it looks. I used this word in one of the earlier parts, I think it was the hunted chapter, and this is the word pushed to a degree, like pushed to the limit. The word is intense because everything here is just so strong, so coming at you, so intense. That's what it is. It's just so powerful. The visuals going on, the sounds, the general environment, it's just so right.
The damn thing won't work.
This moment I think is really powerful because it's that moment where Jodie's realised that she's got no choice but to go in there. And again, the way that she's just accepting that this is what she's going to have to do, that reinforces just the brave tendencies she has. And maybe it's a thing that she's developed by situation, in that she knows she is the only person who has the capability of doing this.
You protect me from the
But it just makes me respect her character so much.
Let's go.
But this is your intensity turned up to the limit. Because we're going to spend most of this final part just being attacked by the entities over and over. And the control methods of making you do this to kill off the entities while you're also trying to travel towards the condenser switch, it's making you multitask, and that really puts you in the mind of what Jodie's going through here. If you can't tell just by how my voice is going, I fucking love this section so much. Just for all the reasons I'm saying, it's just such a well done part of the game. And it's just like the motorbike section in Hunted. This is what I think of when I think interactive drama. There's a really strong environment that we're in, that we are actively having to engage with, that we are responsible for the story progressing. This is the kind of thing we should have had more of in this game. Although I normally don't like flickering light type effects, I really like the way the shadows are sort of just flashing on and off the screen, because that also adds to the atmosphere. Now this is where Jodie needs that climb ladders fast to power up from Mega Man. The shape of the shadows really helps as well, because we've got all these different things here that are all part of the, I guess, the condenser project of a giant ass kind of mechanical pieces. We've got the condenser itself in the middle, so having all these shadows of weird shapes that we can't quite make out is just such a good part of the aesthetical design. I like the design the entities have when they're in the real world as well. That kind of black things sort of flying off them look. Because it really... it dehumanizes them, and that is what the human interpretation of entities would be. They're nothing like us. This must be such a terrifying position to be in. Like, even the teeth on this thing, that's in itself is just symbolic for how terrifying they are when they're flying at you like this. And this is purely an adrenaline-powered exercise for Jodie here, because anyone who was actively thinking while they were doing this, they would have fell down and died probably several times at this point. I don't even mind the action prompts being there, because you can see what's happening. You can see that there's a jump you're going to have to make, so you know to hit forward at that point. But now... hit the switch, go on. And this must be such a painful weight of just watching and hoping that you've done the right thing. And look, we get more of my beautiful glass effects. Damn, that looks so cool, doesn't it? I'm not sure whether the condenser would have been designed to actively blow up when it's disabled. Though that might have been the entities, to be fair, causing that. What they do here is a really personal, emotional kind of reaction.
Aiden? Aiden, are you there?
This is a character development moment if you ever saw it. Because during the chapters where Jodie's younger, we did see her getting really annoyed about Aiden being there. But here we can see she's relieved to know that Aiden's okay.
Jodie. Oh, I should have never sent you there. It's my fault. It's all my fault. My God, I was so afraid I lost you.
Don't let them ever do that again. If they open a passage, there'll be nothing left.
I think it's fair to say the Condenser is my favourite chapter up to this point so far. But join me next time for part 7 of Beyond Two Souls.